Welcome back to our channel 217 Prince White. The chapter begins. Like a bolt from the heavens, Suho lunges into the fray, his silhouette streaking through firelight and shadow. The startled criminals barely register the blur before one is already sent hurtling back by a crushing kick. The momentum doesn't falter. His body spins midair, crashing down with brutal efficiency, scattering the startled thugs in every direction. From the shadows, Baru and the sword observe in silence, eyes glinting with restrained anticipation. The gang members freeze for a moment, stunned by the sudden retaliation. But the confusion quickly morphs into rage as they rally. One charges with a roar, only to be intercepted by Suho's next strike, lightning fast, precise, and overwhelming. Under the flickering glow of the fire, Suho stands tall, fists still clenched, his face unreadable. Then the realization dawns on him. What did I just do? His mind catches up to his body's instinctive reaction. His eyes shift toward the thugs regrouping in disbelief and anger. They shout in confusion. What the heck? Inwardly, Suho panics. Oh no, my body moved on instinct. As adrenaline surges through him, a far more dangerous concern bubbles to the surface. His eyes dart toward the forest edge. It's illegal to trespass into another guild's area. What should I do? But even before he finishes the thought, a flicker of clarity passes through his expression. From the shadows behind him, Baru bursts forth, eyes glowing fiercely, his form wreathed in swirling shadow energy, ready to act at his master's unspoken command. Blue flames surged violently behind him like the breath of a sleeping god awakened. Shadows danced with his will, coiling upward in defiance of the still night. Suho stepped forward beneath the cascade of spectral energy, his eyes glowing like a storm barely contained. Kidnapping people and threatening them, he muttered coldly, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. What kind of scum are you, hyena guild members? The light of the fire cast grotesque shadows on the faces of the stunned men below as they scrambled for an answer, any answer, against the force bearing down on them. One of the Bronio men sneered, trying to mask the fear bleeding through his voice. What kind of bastard are you? Suho remained unmoved. You not only invaded someone else's area, the thug continued, pointing an accusing blade, but even went as far as to attack? You must really want to die, huh? Another barked, get rid of him. With reckless bravado, they surged forward, muscles tensed, fire magic crackling, blades poised to kill. But Suho didn't flinch. A blur of motion split the air. Suho sidestepped a thrust, effortlessly countering with a blur of shadow energy. Suho's hand clenched. Shadows writhed up his arm. I looked it up, he thought calmly amidst the chaos. The average rank of hyena guild members is D rank. His eyes narrowed with focused intent. Just in case, let's hold back a bit. And then he moved. The attacker was launched backward, his body flung like a ragdoll. The remaining members gaped, frozen in place. In one sweeping arc, he launched himself above the heads of the remaining guild members, his silhouette slicing through the night like a shadow-bound missile. His fists clenched tight with purpose, descending like judgment. The blow landed squarely on his opponent's face, a sickening crack reverberating across the clearing. The man's body folded before slamming against the dirt with a thud, the fight knocked out of him in a single hit. From within the dark foliage, Baru observed in awe, his gleaming insectoid eyes wide with pride. Young monarch, he whispered internally, a swell of emotion stirring in his voice. Awakened individuals who were considered D rank by human standards. Have you grown to the point where they're no match for you? Suho stood alone now, surrounded by groaning bodies strewn across the battlefield. Dust swirled around his feet. The young hunter barely breathed hard, not a scratch visible on his skin. His gaze was focused, his spirit razor-sharp. Baru's voice quivered. Baru, am deeply moved. And in that moment, a system notification bloomed before them, the status window. Plain yet sharp in detail, name, Sung Suho. Class, none. Title, none. Level, 16. Fatigue, 0. HP, 2,350. MP, 235. Strength, 33. Agility, 25. Perception, 25. Stamina, 25. Intelligence, 25. Distributable points, 0. The dust settled at last. A bundle of subdued criminals now writhed beneath Baru's bindings. Suho stood over them, calm, resolute, his aura still flickering with residual blue flame. Baru emerged beside him, his antennae twitching with triumph. It was a clean finish, young monarch, he declared with solemn pride. And indeed, it was. The air settled after the flurry of combat, and the freed prisoners stepped forward, eyes wide with disbelief and gratitude. One of them, still trembling, bowed his head deeply towards Suho. "Thank you for your help," he stammered, voice cracking. Suho turned slightly, the obsidian gleam of his summoned sword pulsing faintly beside him. "Are you, by any chance, a hunter from the Hunter Association?" the woman asked, hope woven into every word. There was a pause before Suho offered a faint nod. "Well, something like that," he replied calmly. With a simple gesture, his voice dropped into one of steady command. "I'll handle things here," he said. "All of you should quickly move to a safe place." The captives didn't hesitate. Warned from fear, they began to retreat, limbs weak but hearts racing toward freedom. Suho's gaze sharpened. "But why did the Hyena Guild kidnap people?" The sword responded, its voice low and resonant. "Sung Suho." "I can feel it." Suho's brow furrowed slightly. "Feel what?" The blade tilted slightly, its glow intensifying as it pointed to a shadowy building nearby. "The reason we came here is over there." Suho didn't question it. His steps carried him to the old warehouse at the back of the encampment. The air thickened as he pulled the door open. Cold mist rolled outward from the darkened room beyond, whispering of secrets not meant to be disturbed. His breath caught in his throat as his eyes adjusted to the scene within. Stark fluorescent light spilled across a tiled floor, scattered restraints, shattered cages. And then his voice cracked the silence. "This is..." The cold silence of the chamber was pierced by Suho's quiet breath as his gaze scanned the horrific scene around him. Rusted tools and vials lay scattered beside metal cages, proof of unspeakable cruelty. He slowly approached one of the barred enclosures, the air thick with a lingering dread. A faint glow flickered across the floor as a shadow moved behind him, an aura, faint yet unmistakable. Baru's voice rose from within the dark, tinged with confusion and unease. "The faint aura I'm feeling. Could it be?" Behind the bars, curled up and shivering, was a small creature. Emaciated, bruised, barely conscious. Suho stared down at the figure, heart sinking. "They even imprisoned a puppy, didn't they?" he muttered. But as he looked closer, the weight of that assumption began to unravel. "What exactly is the Hyena Guild trying to do?" he asked aloud. The air around it shimmered with a dormant presence far too powerful for a mere pup. His companion's voice returned, sharper now. "This isn't a puppy." Blue light crept along the sword's edges, illuminating Suho's widening eyes. "This young wolf is the Beast King, descendant of the Fang Lord." Below, the creature stirred slightly in its bindings, the chains groaning softly as if they, too, recognized the dormant power within their captive. Suho's heart pounded as the realization struck him fully. What? Then came the memory. A specter of the past, veiled in blood-red shadows. A towering figure, the Fang Lord, emerged from the dark, his form glowing with furious resolve. Immediately after the defeat in the war with the Shadow Monarch, Baru explained, the Fang Lord assigned a guard to escort the surviving descendant to the sanctuary. Ashes and fire, honor and desperation. He believed that as long as the bloodline wasn't severed, another Fang Lord would eventually arise. "Honestly," Sword added, "I didn't hope for the birth of another Fang Lord." And in that moment, amid dust and metal, a spark of movement shot through the shadows, one not of fear, but of awakening. A growl, a surge of life. Something had begun to stir inside the cage. Something ancient, something unstoppable. Suho stood still, his hand resting near his side, as Sword's voice echoed in the gloom. "I merely wished for the bloodline of that person's clan to continue." The air in the dark chamber pulsed faintly, as if the very walls acknowledged the lineage Baru spoke of. Suho's eyes narrowed as he stared at the weakened beast cub inside the cage, his blue aura shimmering in resonance with the creature's own. "It certainly feels like the faint aura of the monarch of fangs," Baru muttered solemnly. The insectoid figure hovered beside Suho, his tone grave. "It seems to be greatly weakened, and if left as it is, it will most likely die." Suho's gaze dropped, his jaw tightening. The weight of the decision pressed on him as Baru posed the question. "Young monarch, what will you do?" He hesitated, eyes still fixed on the suffering cub. Before he could finish, something caught his attention in the shadows. Baru's expression sharpened. "What's this?" Down the corridor, a soft thud and a shifting aura. Suho stepped forward cautiously, Baru following close behind. His senses flared. "I thought there would be several, since all the guys outside were knocked out," he murmured. A sharp tension coiled in his chest. "But there's only one." A heavy breath escaped his lips, his instinct screaming at him. Then suddenly, his expression contorted. "Damn. Were there any leftovers?" Then came a guttural snarl, and Suho's eyes widened. Huh. From the far side of the room, red eyes gleamed in the shadows. A towering beast emerged, its frame hulking, its claws dragging across the floor like sabers. A monster. The creature straightened, stepping fully into the light. A dark, savage grin stretched across its face. The hyena guild. They seem like useless scum, it growled. Indeed, humans are unreliable, it sneered with disdain. Recognition flashed in Sword's voice. Braki. You're still alive. Suho turned slightly, puzzled. Do you know him? Sword's reply came instantly, cold and absolute. I do. Beneath the dim light of the underground chamber, Sword's voice pulsed with guilt and revelation. The towering beast before Suho, eyes aglow and body shrouded in shadows, was more than just a monster, it was the very guardian once entrusted with a sacred duty. The guard I assigned to the descendant I mentioned earlier is that monster, Sword confessed solemnly. The beast growled, voice thick with recognition and resentment. It's been a while, Rockin' Sword. You're still alive, huh? Sword's tone turned sharp. Braki, you haven't forgotten that you were sent to guard the descendant, have you? The air grew heavier with each word, tension crackling like static between them. Suho's grip tightened around the wolf, heart racing. What have you been doing until things reached this point? The beast's eyes narrowed with confusion, lips curling as it muttered, What? Suddenly, rage exploded from Braki. With a flash of red energy, he lunged forward like a hurricane unleashed. Human, how dare you lay your hands on my possession? Suho's eyes widened as he barely reacted in time, dodging the claw that sliced through the air with merciless precision. So fast, he thought, jaw clenched, blue aura flaring around him. Above them, the monster roared, crimson light streaking from his attack as he swung with overwhelming might. Suho braced himself, meeting the beast's charge with unwavering resolve, as their auras collided in a violent explosion of force and fury. The monstrous force slammed into the earth with explosive might, crashing down from above like a meteor. The ground buckled and erupted on impact, sending stone and debris flying in every direction. Shockwaves rippled outward, and the sheer momentum carved a deep trench through the structure's foundation. Another explosive thud followed, louder, heavier, resonating with fury. Baru's panicked shriek echoed as he shot through the air in pursuit, wings slicing through the dust-filled silence. Young monarch. In the wake of the destruction, Suho's crumpled form lay buried in the fractured crater, debris piled around him, the floor now mangled beyond recognition. His surroundings were eerily quiet, save for the settling dust. Baru landed moments later, his glowing eyes filled with worry. Young monarch, are you all right? The faint tremor in his voice betrayed his fear. Suho slowly rose, holding his side, wincing. This is the most painful one amongst the recent injuries, he muttered, his breath ragged. You are bleeding. Baru cried, horrified by the sight. But Suho, pressing a hand to his pounding head, only responded dryly, Don't shout, Baru. My head is ringing. A dull notification appeared before him like a whisper through the haze. The level of skill, toughness has increased. Physical defense, plus 20%, plus 40%. Despite the pain, he was growing stronger. Baru hovered beside him, his voice turning thoughtful. Young monarch, when we arrived here, there was a faint aura remaining. His words trailed as he recalled the sensation, then solidified, certain now. Just now, I'm sure of what it is. The shadows around Suho flickered as he focused. Baru's voice lowered, solemn. Iterum. A rush of realization struck Suho as his gaze darkened. I can feel the aura of Iterum from that guy. The battlefield simmered with tension as Braki, the towering beast, loomed over the fallen young wolf, his muscles flexing with rage and betrayal. Sparks of energy pulsed through the ground beneath him as his shadow spread like a storm cloud. Braki, he growled, do you know what you're daring to do to the descendant of the monarch? The voice of Sword echoed, filled with warning and fury. Below the surface, something darker stirred within Braki. A twisted smirk etched itself across his monstrous snout. How do you think I've managed to maintain this level of strength, even after losing the sanctuary? Survival of the fittest, he spat. The survival of the weak is determined by the whims of the strong. His voice grew deeper, heavier, filled with savage doctrine. And it's the natural order, for the weak to become nourishment for the strong. As he held up the unconscious young wolf, a twisted gleam burned in his blood-red eyes. This guy is weak, but his very lineage is from the monarch of fangs, he declared. You could say, he's the best source of nourishment. A low growl turned into a rumbling snarl. His jagged fangs parted, and his breath became a hot, murderous mist. That's why. I'll consume him. The bloodline of the descendant of the monarch, Braki. The beast ignored him, his savage grin twisting as if he'd already won. I'll make sure to kill you for sure, Braki growled, charging with relentless bloodlust. His silhouette blurred, like a flash of red lightning racing towards Suho. In the midst of his charge, he let out a mocking laugh. What can a halfwit like you do alone? His words cut sharp, biting through the smoke like venom. The fact that Rakan is dead proves he was weak. But in that instant, something else moved. From within the shadows, beneath the heavy air, Suho's fist clenched. A pale blue glow burst around his hand, flickering with sovereign power. Something ancient was awakening. From the depths of resolve and pain, now ignited with an aura of burning defiance. A cold gleam of determination pierces through the shadows surrounding him. The voice inside him echoes with absolute conviction. I, who have survived, am truly suited to being strong. A flare of power surges from his body, blue flames dancing like a royal mantle. He raises 2 fingers in silent defiance. This wasn't surrender. It was the signal of his rise. His voice cuts through the roar of chaos. The next one suited to be the monarch of fangs is me. In the blink of an eye, Suho's blade is drawn. Blue light splits the air, and the tip of his sword crashes downward in a divine arc. The monstrous figure of Braki reels back, too slow to comprehend the speed behind the strike. The beast stumbles, eyes wide in disbelief. A gasp escapes its lips. Before he can recover, Baru soars in, effortlessly catching the battered young warrior from earlier in a graceful leap. The battlefield tilts once more as Suho steps forward, his aura unwavering. Lightning arcs through the atmosphere, streaking across the walls like heaven's fury. With practiced ease, Suho lifts his blade, leveling it at the monstrous creature. Suho's gaze doesn't flinch. Suho stands tall, the glow of his father's legacy wrapping around him like a storm. It seems the monarch of fangs is angry at that guy, which is just as well. I also have business with that guy. He turns slightly, a faint smirk brushing his lips. It's the first alliance between the shadow and the fang. A shiver runs down his spine as he whispers the name etched into the bloodline. Iterum. For the first time in his journey, Suho feels it. A clue. Something that leads directly to his father. And now, that clue stands before him, hostile, corrupted, hungry. I finally found a clue that leads to my father. His fists tremble with rage. The figure of Braki snarls in the distance, power bubbling from his monstrous form. Annoying. How dare this bug? A deep red glow gathers in Braki's core as he lifts his head in fury, eyes glowing like coals in the dark. I'll kill him. And in that moment, the system responds. With chilling precision, an urgent message materializes before Suho's eyes. Notification. A quest has arrived. The command is simple. Quest info. Emergency quest. Hunt the hyena. Eliminate the hyena Braki to ensure your safety. Braki defeated. 0/1. The air hung still around the battlefield as the boy stirred. His breathing was shallow, but his eyes flickered open, bloodshot, burning with clarity. He could feel it now. The immense pressure. The predator's gaze boring into his back. Broki's yellow eyes locked onto the rising figure. He flinched. The silhouette standing before him exuded an oppressive calm. Hair fluttering in the wind, coat gently swaying. Suho had returned to his feet. No words. No dramatic flourish. Just that single presence, silently reigning over the broken earth. Then, a sharp chime pierced the air. A new notification. A golden window hovered before Suho, declaring with chilling urgency. Urgent quest. Hunt the hyena. Eliminate the hyena Braki to ensure safety. Defeat Braki 0/1. He read it silently, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. The hyena Braki, huh? Suho's eyes narrowed. Now he understood. The guild's name hadn't been symbolic or accidental. It had been personal, literal. This beast, this monster, was the source behind the hyena guild. A wave of revulsion washed over him. How could a creature like this build a guild and kidnap people? His fists clenched. There was only one explanation. Iterum. Another piece of the puzzle slotted into place. This beast wasn't working alone. There was something deeper, darker threading through all of this. Across the field, Braki raised his head as a frantic voice shouted through the din. Mr. Braki, one of the bound prisoners, ragged, bruised, desperate, struggled forward. Please untie this. Suho's presence had ignited a spark in their hopeless eyes. The others joined in, shouting toward the monstrous beast. That guy is no ordinary foe. We'll join in too. Yet Braki remained still, his crimson pupils twitching slightly. A dark growl brewed in his throat, as if weighing something deeper than simple commands. The hyena-like beast, Brockie, bared its massive fangs with a guttural roar that reverberated across the ruined ground. His jaws opened wide and attacked his companions. A violent blast of crimson energy detonated behind him, painting the sky in blood-red fury. The attack struck hard, driving shadows against the broken walls, silhouetting the beast in a wash of chaos. In that instant, Suho stared wide-eyed at the aftermath. What? From the shadows emerged the imposing form of Brockie, his muscles bulging with malice, his voice heavy with disdain. To think they assumed I'd need help dealing with the likes of you. Those who don't know their place become prey. Suho met that declaration with a fearless counterattack. Sword in hand, lightning at his heels, he roared as he lunged, Brockie. But the beast twisted at the last second, dodging with startling speed. His eyes widened as he locked on Suho's approach. Time stretched. The next blow would decide everything. Rage surged through Suho's clenched jaw as his blade pulsed with violent energy. His voice thundered across the battlefield, seething with contempt. To kill people, for such a petty reason. Across from him, Brockie bared his jagged teeth in a twisted snarl. His crimson eyes gleamed under the night's shroud, voice thick with arrogance. The weak are at the mercy of the strong. The hulking beast surged forward, muscles coiled with brutal force. You think the strong need a reason to take what they want. The air cracked with pressure as his massive claw cleaved downward. But Suho didn't flinch. He met the charge head-on, blades clashing with a resounding fury that split the earth beneath their feet. Before Suho could recover, Brockie attacked again. Crimson and violet sparks burst outward as steel tore into flesh. The clash left no room for hesitation. Brockie staggered, but his brute strength lashed out again in a sweeping strike. Suho weaved through the fury, twisting through midair, answering with his own relentless assault. They collided again and again, fist against blade, claw against shadow, each blow a thunderclap of will and wrath. Suho's strikes carved clean lines through the chaos, forcing Brockie to the defensive, driving him back step by step. Finally, with a sharp pivot, foot slammed into the ground. His entire weight behind the blow, sending debris and dust erupting around them like a cratered battlefield. The momentum was shifting. The monster who had ruled through fear now stared up at the warrior cloaked in shadows and defiance. And Suho wasn't done yet. The earth trembled beneath Brockie's heavy sprint, his crimson aura igniting the battlefield in a violent blaze. With each pounding footstep, rubble scattered like leaves in a storm, and arcs of power crackled around his feral form. The ground caved under the force of his raw fury. Then, Brockie's bloodshot eye widened as Suho's figure vanished in a flash of speed. But Suho was already behind him. A burst of energy spiraled in the air. Suho, rising, sword drawn, his body coiled within a whirlwind of light and force. Storm slash. The blade came crashing down like a celestial scythe, the force so sharp it tore through Brockie's guard and sent his body recoiling. Light danced through the dusk, carving trails along Brockie's thick hide. The hyena-like beast staggered, blood scattering across the battlefield like ink flung by fury. But he only laughed. Is that all you've got? Brockie's grin widened, revealing rows of fangs dripping with rage. The name of the Fang monarch's relic must be crying. Just as he prepared to counter, his smirk faltered. His body froze mid-motion, pupils narrowing with sudden realization. Suho's figure blurred again, surging forward with frightening speed, his sword gleaming with vengeance. The next blow was already upon him. It's not over yet. Suho surged forward, his blade blazing with kinetic energy, the force of his will channeled into every fiber of his being. His body blurred with the velocity of his attack, light streaking behind him as the command left his lips like a gunshot. Spin. The spiraling force exploded forth, a blinding, whirling barrage of power slamming into Brockie's monstrous frame. Blue-white slashes tore through the battlefield, a maelstrom of fury condensed into deadly precision. But even in the chaos of that attack, Fang's thoughts drifted. Eyes trembling, voice laced with confusion, he murmured, "Why have you changed like this?" The whirlwind blew against him, yet his mind was trapped in fragments of memory. You, who respected Lord Rakan and swore loyalty, why have you changed like this? The last words came with a pang, not of physical pain, but of betrayal. A faint shimmer flickered in Fang's eye, and then it burst. A jagged golden symbol tore through the darkness of his mind, as if something deep within him had been awakened. No, shattered. I, he whispered, a silhouette of himself cloaked in shadow and contempt. Respected Rakan? His disbelief twisted into anger. Beneath the dim aura of cracked memory, a golden cross-like seal emerged, glitching, unstable, unnatural. It pulsed with a low screech as if the truth had been corrupted long ago. His eye ignited with that cursed symbol, now fully awakened. No. His voice came low, jagged like stone tearing through flesh. With a burst of rage, he lunged forward, claws slashing, darkness erupting like a beast unchained. That's not true. The blood-red battlefield shuddered as his frame tore forward, fury crackling in every step. The clash of his fist with the earth sent jagged shards of debris flying, a desperate rebuttal exploding from the ground beneath his feet. The enemy's taunt still echoed in the air, mocking, venomous. There was no respect. The monstrous foe howled from above, teeth bared, eyes blazing in crimson. His massive body pulsed with hatred, his words bitter and steeped in regret. Back then, I merely surrendered to Rakan's strength. The battlefield seemed to quake with that confession. You think I'd continue living such a weak life? Fang's voice boomed from above, filled not just with rage, but purpose. Eyes wide, Suho gasped. Fang. And with it, so was destiny. The crimson giant's voice roared with fury as his knee drove into Suho's stomach, lifting him into the air like a rag doll. Is this the time to worry about others, you insect? Pain, sharp and all-consuming, ripped through Suho's body. His limbs trembled as blood burst from the wound, his figure flung like a shadow spiraling midair. It hurts. His mind screamed. It feels like my bones are being crushed. But even as agony clawed at every nerve, something within him refused to collapse. But the image surged through his mind like a burning flare in the dark. His father, Jinwoo, standing alone before an ocean of destruction. That unshakable silhouette, that unbreakable will. When I think of father fighting somewhere, the vision ignited a fire deep within Suho's core. Energy surged. Darkness wrapped around his arms, coiling like blades of wrath. His feet found the ground again, not with weakness, but with renewed force. Cracks burst through the floor beneath him as he screamed, not in pain, but defiance. With a thunderous blast of mana, Suho launched himself back into the fray, an echo of his father's will made flesh. The ground beneath them shattered with the force of their clash. In the heart of the impact, Suho bared his teeth and roared inwardly. I can't fall. As the shockwave rippled outward, young lord. The sheer power of the impact sent debris scattering across the ruined battlefield, and amidst the devastation, the relic of the Fang monarch, shattered, battered, lay embedded deep in the cracked earth. From its broken form, a trail of energy leaked away like blood from a fatal wound. A faint voice echoed from within, heavy with regret and longing. Power is leaking out from the broken blade. Am I disappearing like this? The survival of my descendants. The future of the fangs. To think I have to entrust it all to you, sung Suho. I want to fight more. I still want to fight. In that moment, from the dust and shadow, a small creature rushed forward, tiny feet pounding the broken ground. It was swift, desperate, determined. The glow in its eyes shimmered as it locked onto the relic. Lord Rakan's descendant. The thought resonated through the air like a revelation. Ah, I see. The battlefield trembled under the shockwaves of their latest clash. Suho drove his fist with explosive force into the beast's chest, lightning crackling around his knuckles, his eyes burning with the will to survive. Every strike was a cry of defiance, not just against Fang, but against the weight of destiny bearing down on him. Below them, the Fang-shaped relic pulsed. The crimson aura that had once seemed dormant now flickered violently, as if stirred by the echo of battle. And then, something shifted. The wolfish creature, Lord Rakan's descendant, lurched forward, its body trembling. Not from fear, but from awakening. Its eyes, once dull and lost, now shimmered with a golden flame, as if something ancient had been stirred from deep within. Could it be, moved by Suho's relentless resolve? A quiet realization glimmered, its gaze narrowed, burning with newfound clarity. A voice echoed within, its own, faint, yet determined. I remember, the last thing I can do. It stepped toward the heart of the flame, the aura of the relic wrapping around it, not as a master to servant, but as kin. Give my remaining strength to the descendant. With a mighty surge of light, its body erupted in a blazing vortex, the final ember of a lineage refusing to be extinguished. The fire raced toward the skies, and from it emerged a shape, empowered, reborn, charging straight for the enemy. The ground quaked as Fang recoiled, instinctively sensing the anomaly. At the heart of that blazing charge, Suho surged once more, his posture squared, his body surrounded by a powerful barrier of energy. Every fiber of his being was brimming with the borrowed strength of the past. And across the battlefield, Brokey watched in eerie silence. No laughter, no mockery, only a slow, deliberate step forward, as if for the first time. He felt something akin to caution. The war was far from over. Suho staggered to his feet, drenched in sweat and blood, his ragged breathing echoing in the hollow quiet that followed Fang's last devastating blow. His arms trembled beneath the weight of his broken body, but the fire in his eyes refused to dim. Cracks splintered the earth where he had fallen, dust swirling in the air like smoke from a battlefield long lost. His HP, now barely a flickering ember, flashed before him. 21 out of 2,350. A brutal reminder of just how close death's shadow hovered. Clenching his fists, Suho's eyes narrowed. He had thought himself stronger. He believed that all the battles, the trials, the training had made him ready. But standing here, nearly broken by Fang's might, doubt whispered in his ear. Was it truly impossible to win? Fang's heavy steps crushed the earth as he approached, body engulfed in a storm of crimson mana, his voice a guttural snarl. You're quite persistent for an insect. The monster's sneer widened, rage flaring behind glowing red eyes. Just die already. A roar split the battlefield, talons extended and fangs bared in a beastly frenzy. Suho's mind screamed. Damn it! He braced for the impact, but in a flash of radiant gold, a dark silhouette appeared, cleaving the air between them. The impact never came. Suho's own breath caught in his throat. From the cratered battlefield, he looked up in awe. Someone had arrived, and everything had just changed. The monstrous beast recoiled, a guttural growl escaping its maw as one glowing yellow eye narrowed in shock and fury. Ugh! You! It snarled, its voice thick with disbelief. Its gaze dropped to its side, where deep claw marks now oozed dark blood, fresh, raw, and unexpected. Emerging through the chaos, the young wolf stood tall, no longer a helpless bystander. The descendant of Rakan now radiated a fierce new aura. Golden lines crackled across its black fur, pulsing with the last remnants of its ancestors' flame. Eyes locked forward, it placed itself firmly between Suho and the enraged enemy, fangs bared, muscles tensed, refusing to retreat. Suho, barely standing behind it, could only watch in awe as this beast, once trembling, now stood like a guardian. Then, a low, resonant growl rumbled from the wolf's throat. A system chime rang out through the air, cutting cleanly through the haze of battle. Notification: Descendant of the Fangs pays respect to the player's fighting spirit. Another prompt followed, glowing in golden letters as if answering a silent promise made on the battlefield. Would you like to recruit Descendant of the Fangs as a companion? Suho's eyes widened. That young wolf from earlier? He muttered, voice soft, full of wonder. As the wolf turned its head slightly, its glowing eye met Suho's, steady, ready. Recruit, as a companion? The winds stirred between them. One born of battle, one forged by legacy. Now, their paths would become one. But the enemy, seething in crimson rage, interrupted the moment. The massive beast's eyes narrowed in disbelief. Rakan's descendant, he snarled, his voice a cocktail of hate and confusion. Don't tell me, you absorbed the mana from Rakan's fangs. The truth was undeniable. The aura surrounding the wolf pulsed with ancient, inherited might. The werebeast's face contorted further in rage. Absorbed the mana from Raken's fang. Even Suho couldn't hide his astonishment. The question forming in his mind, was this power given or sacrificed? Did Raken, the monarch of fangs, truly give up everything for this descendant? Again, the system prompt hovered before him, unwavering. Would you like to recruit descendant of the fangs as a companion? This time, Suho didn't hesitate. His voice steadied. His intent was clear. I was planning to cooperate with the fangs from the beginning anyway. There's no hesitation in Suho's gaze. No reason to waver. With quiet resolve, he lifts his hand and declares, yes. The system acknowledges his decision with a chime that echoes like destiny unfolding. You have recruited descendant of the fangs as a companion. In an instant, their eyes lock, Suho and the young wolf. A surge of silent understanding sparks between them, as if the pact they just formed binds more than battle, it intertwines spirit and survival. But then, something begins to stir within his mind. A memory not his own, or perhaps a vision left behind. Darkness engulfs the scene, fragmenting like shattered data, before taking form in a desolate cavern. A massive figure slumps against the stone, a beast of scars and solemn pride. It's the final moment of Lord Raken, the monarch of fangs. Descendant of Lord Raken. We lost the war against the Shadow Monarch. The voice trembles with a heavy truth, one passed from the old guard to the new. This world is ruled by survival of the fittest. And having lost, the fangs have lost much, honor, home, and him. But from now on, he growls, leaning in with one last spark in his eyes, make sure to become strong. For the prosperity of the fangs. The memory burns into the young wolf's soul. And then, he howls. The howl echoes through the cavern like the roar of legacy reborn. In the present, the descendant of the fangs jolts awake, wide-eyed, breath-trembling. The ancient message had been etched into his heart. The towering beast knelt in agony, his breathing ragged as his golden eye trembled under the weight of the presence before him. He dared to ask what no one else would. What was this being in front of him? Why wasn't he already dead? Why was he spared? A figure stood calmly in the pale moonlight, her face veiled in icy shadow, her gaze unwavering. This should be enough to qualify, she said coldly, her voice echoing through the silence like a final verdict. Her eyes analyzed the trembling beast before her. Seems like a quite useful beast. In one fluid motion, her hand moved forward, glowing with otherworldly light. I'll choose this one. The beast's expression twisted into fear and disbelief. His single eye widened in horror as the light surged toward his forehead. In the next instant, a golden spear of mana pierced into his skull, branding him, claiming him. A shriek tore through the cavern as Brokey, the hyena-like creature, screamed in raw, feral pain. His entire body convulsed as mana surged through him, reshaping what he was and who he would now serve. The towering red-furred warrior leaned in, his words low but commanding. Hyena Brokey, from now on, your mission is to capture humans alive and deliver them to us. The dark chamber pulsed with sinister power. Brokey still shivered, his breath panicked, but the command had already taken root within him. That thing we implanted in you, the warrior continued ominously, will amplify your power and assist you. Brokey dropped to the ground, twitching. The red lines etched into his skin glowed faintly as mana coursed through him like venom. Of course, depending on the user, he collapsed in a heap, whimpering as the shadow of control fully overtook his will. The young wolf's eye trembled, unnerved by the chaos boiling within him. He had changed. Something had twisted, not his form, but his very will. Behind that demonic grin, behind the glitching red aura, his predator's heart now beat to a corrupted rhythm. It was no ordinary madness. It seemed to twist their existing desires, not erase them, not override them, but distort them into something monstrous. Suho stood quietly, absorbing what he had just witnessed. His breath was slow but deep, his mind reeling. Were these the memories of the descendant of the fangs? His vision clouded with silhouettes, shadows of tall, menacing figures. It was them, the ones who had done this to Brokey, the ones who had implanted something unnatural into his eye. Could they be the true culprits? Were they directly connected to Iterum? Suho's eyes narrowed with purpose. The descendant of the fangs hadn't wanted revenge, only to stop the rampaging Brokey. To prevent this madness from spreading any further. That had been his final act of will. And now, that burden had passed to him. If this connected to their greater plan, then Suho had no choice. He had to defeat Brokey, no matter the cost. But as he stared up at the looming, muscular silhouette of Brokey, blazing with wild crimson energy, a grim reality tightened his chest. He didn't yet have the strength to do it. Then a chime. A familiar digital tone echoed in his mind. A system notification appeared before his eyes. A quest had arrived, triggered by the recruitment of a companion. His eyes widened as the realization struck him. Huh. The system window unfolded before Suho like the turning of Destiny's page. Quest information. Quest. Descendants of the monarchs. Find the descendants of the monarchs and recruit them as companions. Descendants of monarchs recruited as companions. 1. Reward. The light from the message faded, but another immediately followed. A bond skill is formed due to your bond with the descendant of the fangs. In that instant, the world trembled. From Suho's side, the young wolf, descendant of the fangs, howled as golden lightning surged through his body, crackling with raw, primal energy. At the same time, blue streaks of power danced around Suho, wrapping his body in luminous coils of mana. Their bond wasn't merely emotional, it was elemental, a fusion of purpose and bloodline. The synchronization was complete. Suho's eyes lit up as power, unfamiliar and immense, surged through his veins. He didn't just feel stronger, he felt connected, as though the heartbeat of another pulsed within him. Then, everything exploded. A blinding burst of radiant light ignited the battlefield. Brokey shielded his face, staggering back. What is this? A voice echoed in the air, trembling and in awe. This is. High above the chaos, a shadowed figure observed with a knowing gaze. A change different from the monarch is happening to the young monarch. Chapter end here. For more, like, share, and subscribe.